Have you ever looked at someone at work who used to be sharp, engaged, proactive, and full of ideas, and now they're doing the bare minimum just to get through the day? And maybe people around them assume they changed. Maybe they say, that person got lazy. Or they say, the person has a bad attitude. Maybe they say that they're no longer a team player. But many times that is not the truth. The truth is, high achievers usually don't wake up one day and suddenly decide to stop caring. Usually something at work slowly taught them that caring too much comes at a cost. And that is what I want to talk about today, because this happens more than many leaders want to admit. A lot of high-performing professionals are not disengaged because they lack ambition. They are disengaged because they are tired. They are exhausted. They are emotionally drained by environments that don't know how to handle excellence. And when that happens long enough, even the most motivated employee can emotionally check out. So in this video, I want to talk about how micromanagement, lack of recognition, and inconsistent leadership slowly drain the motivation of top performers. Because when high achievers stop caring at work, there's usually a story behind it. If you are someone who naturally takes pride in your work, this conversation will probably hit home. If you're the kind of person who does not need to be chased down to do what needs to be done, if you're someone who thinks ahead, solves problems, shows initiative, and tries to do things with excellence, then you also know how frustrating it is to work in an environment where those qualities are not valued properly. Over the years, I've talked with colleagues and professionals from different industries, and one thing keeps coming up. I've heard versions of this from people in government, education, science-based environments, and beyond. And the pattern is consistent. Some of the most capable people are not struggling because they cannot do the job. They are struggling because they are working under leadership that makes doing the job well emotionally expensive. That's the issue. Not the work itself, not the standard itself, not the responsibility. It is the emotional cost attached to caring. And once people start realizing that the more they care, the more pressure, scrutiny, confusion, or neglect they receive, something begins to shift. Not all at once, but slowly, quietly, and deeply. Let's start here. High achievers usually do not come into a role looking for a reason to disengage. They usually come in ready to contribute, ready to learn, ready to improve things, ready to make an impact. These are often the people who go beyond what is required without being asked. They look for ways to make systems better. They care about quality. They care about timelines. They care about outcomes. They care about doing things well, not just doing enough to get by. And one thing I think people miss is this. For a true high achiever, effort is not usually the burden. The burden is what happens when that effort is mishandled. That is when things start to change. Because high achievers can work hard. What becomes draining is working hard in the wrong environment. Working hard where trust is low. Working hard where leadership is inconsistent. Working hard where your effort is constantly scrutinized, but rarely supported. Working hard where every sign of competence leads to a heavier load. In too many workplaces, the reward for doing great work is not greater trust or greater opportunity. It's simply more work. And after a while, that stops feeling like recognition and starts feeling like exploitation. That is where emotional fatigue begins. This is one of the most frustrating parts for high achievers. And a lot of people do not talk about it enough. The reward for being competent is often more work, not more support, not more pay, not more flexibility, not more influence, just more work. The reliable person gets more put on their plate. The organized person gets asked to clean up other people's messes. The one who meets deadlines gets handled the urgent projects. The one who communicates well gets expected to carry the confusion created by poor leadership. And after a while, that dynamic starts to wear people down. Because at first, a high achiever may take pride in being dependable. But eventually, they start noticing something. Their excellence is not creating relief, it's creating dependency. Their capability is not leading to trust, it is leading to overload. Their consistency is not opening doors, it's making them the default person to absorb more. That is when people begin to emotionally pull back. Because no matter how disciplined or driven someone is, nobody wants to feel like their strongest qualities are being used against them. And that is exactly how it feels in many workplaces. What leadership calls trust sometimes looks more like overloading the people who are least likely to complain. That is not healthy leadership. That is poor distribution, poor support, and in many cases, quiet exploitation. Let's talk about micromanagement, because this is one of the fastest ways to break down a motivated employee. Micromanagement is not leadership. Let's just be honest about that. It is often fear dressed up as management. It is insecurity dressed up as oversight. It is control dressed up as involvement. And high achievers feel that immediately. Because when someone has already demonstrated that they're responsible, thoughtful, and capable, constant hovering does not feel supportive. It feels insulting. It sends a message, whether leaders mean to send it or not. And the message is, I see your track record, but I still don't trust you. That does something to people. It chips away at motivation, because now the employee is not just doing the work. They are also managing the stress of being watched too closely. They are managing unnecessary check-ins. They are managing second guessing. They are managing control that does not improve the work, but absolutely affects morale. And what makes it worse is this. Many times, the same employee being micromanaged is also the one caring the most. So not only are they being overmanaged, they are also being overused. They are producing, they are delivering, they are keeping things moving. And still, they're not being given the autonomy that should come with proven competence. Eventually, many high achievers stop asking themselves, how can I contribute more? Instead, they start asking, how do I protect my peace in this environment? That's a major shift, because once someone moves from contribution mode into protection mode, you're not getting the best of them anymore. You are getting what is left after the frustration. And organizations lose a lot right there. They lose creativity. They lose initiative. They lose honest engagement. They lose the very energy they claim to want. Another issue that drains high achievers is inconsistent leadership. And this one is subtle, but it's damaging. I'm talking about environments where you can be criticized harshly in one meeting and then praised in the next one as if nothing happened. Or where expectations keep shifting depending on the leader's mood, the politics in the room, or the pressure coming from above. That kind of inconsistency creates emotional instability at work. And let me be clear, high achievers can handle feedback. In fact, many of them appreciate clear, constructive feedback because they want to improve. But conflicting feedback is different. Conflicting feedback does not sharpen people. It confuses them. It makes them question where they stand. It makes them second guess their instincts. It makes them spend energy trying to decode leadership instead of focusing on performance. And that's exhausting. And when someone never really knows whether they're doing well or whether they're about to be criticized again, they stop operating from confidence. They start operating from caution. And caution changes the way people show up. They stop speaking up as much. They stop taking thoughtful risks. They stop bringing bold ideas. They start reducing themselves to what feels safe. That is not because they lost their brilliance. It's because the environment trained them to shrink it. And I think that is one of the most frustrating things for high achievers. Not just being overlooked, but being gradually conditioned to become smaller at work than they really are. Now let's talk about recognition. Because sometimes when people hear this, they immediately reduce it to, oh, so people just want praise. No, that's not the point. This is deeper than that. High achievers are not usually asking for applause every 5 minutes. Most of them are not looking for constant validation, but they do want to know that their work is being seen accurately. Recognition is not just about compliments. It's about acknowledgement. It's about respect. It's about being valued correctly. It's about leadership understanding the weight you carry and the consistency you bring. And when that does not happen, people notice. They notice when they're the ones solving problems, stabilizing situations, producing quality work, carrying extra responsibility, and still being treated like their contribution is ordinary or disposable. They notice when weaker performance gets protected, while stronger performance gets overburdened. They notice when their reliability becomes something people take for granted instead of something leaders respect. They notice when the reward for always showing up strong is that even more gets placed on their shoulders. And eventually, a question starts forming in their mind. What exactly is the benefit of caring this much here? This is the dangerous question. Because once a high achiever starts asking that question seriously, disengagement is usually already in motion. Not because they've lost their values, but because they are beginning to realize that their effort is being consumed, not cultivated. And there is a difference. A healthy environment develops excellence. An unhealthy one drains it. This is something I really want leaders to understand. By the time a high achiever leaves an organization, they're often checked out emotionally long before they physically exit it. That means they may still be showing up. They may still be meeting deadlines. They may still be doing what is expected. They may still look productive on paper, but inwardly, something has changed. The fire is lower. The creativity is lower. The emotional investment is lower. The willingness to go above and beyond is lower. And that matters. Because some leaders think that if an employee is still present, then everything is fine. It's not. Presence is not the same as engagement. Compliance is not the same as commitment. And just because someone is still functioning does not mean they're still flourishing. A lot of high achievers learn how to survive in unhealthy environments. That does not mean the environment is healthy. It just means they are capable. But even capable people have limits. Even disciplined people have limits. Resilient people have limits. Even committed people have limits. And when those limits are reached, the result is often not dramatic at first. It's quiet. They stop volunteering. They stop offering ideas. They stop stretching. They stop emotionally attaching themselves to outcomes. They do their job, and that's it. And honestly, I think many workplaces are losing exceptional people this way without even realizing it. Not always through resignation, but through internal withdrawal. This hits high achievers especially hard because they usually came in with strong internal standards. They are not people who need to be begged to care. They already care. So when they start to disconnect, it's usually after repeated disappointment. Repeated disappointment in leadership. Repeated disappointment in communication. Repeated disappointment in fairness. Repeated disappointment in how excellence is handled. And that disappointment becomes emotional wear and tear. Because one of the hardest things for a high achiever is realizing that doing more, being better prepared, being more thoughtful, and showing more initiative does not always improve their experience at work. Sometimes it just makes them a bigger target for control. Sometimes it gives leaders more access to their energy without more respect for their contribution. Sometimes it just means the load gets heavier because leadership knows they'll carry it. And when that pattern continues, they start pulling back, not because they are weak, because they are tired of investing deeply in systems that mishandle what they bring. That's real. And I think a lot of professionals need language for that. Because when you are in that kind of environment for too long, it is easy to blame yourself. You start wondering, am I overreacting? Am I expecting too much? Am I the problem? Why am I not as motivated as I used to be? Sometimes the answer is not something is wrong with your ambition. Sometimes the answer is that poor leadership has been wearing your ambition down. That's the truth. Now let's shift to what strong leadership actually looks like. Because I don't want this to become a conversation just about identifying the problem. Strong leadership does not suffocate high achievers. It gives them structure without unnecessary control. It gives them clarity without confusion. It gives them accountability without emotional instability. It gives them trust where trust has been earned. That matters. Strong leaders understand that capable employees do not need to be micromanaged into excellence. They need to be led well. They need clear expectations. They need honest communication. They need consistency. They need room to think. They need fair recognition. They need feedback that is grounded and stable, not emotional and erratic. And I will say this plainly. Some leaders do not actually want excellence. They want obedience. They say they want strong people on their team, but what they really want is people who will perform well without challenging dysfunction, without noticing inconsistency, and without outgrowing their control. That's not leadership. That's insecurity. A strong leader is not threatened by capable people. A strong leader knows how to develop them. A strong leader knows how to direct without diminishing. A strong leader knows how to correct without confusing. A strong leader knows how to support without smothering. And if more leaders understood that, fewer high achievers will be emotionally checking out. If you have noticed yourself becoming less enthusiastic, less invested, more detached, or more guarded at work, don't rush to label yourself as lazy. Pay attention to what has been shaping your response. Pay attention to the environment. Pay attention to the leadership patterns. Pay attention to how often your effort has been mishandled. Pay attention to whether you have been working in a culture that draws out your best or slowly drains it. Because there's a difference between losing your work ethic and losing your willingness to keep pouring into what is not healthy. Those are not the same thing. And I think that distinction matters. Now, that doesn't mean that every difficult work environment is an excuse to disengage completely, but it does mean you need to be honest about what is happening to you emotionally. Because when your care is constantly met with confusion, pressure, neglect, or control, it will affect you. You're human. And some of you are not dealing with a motivation problem. You are dealing with the emotional consequences of poor leadership. That deserves honest reflection. So when high achievers stop caring at work, it's not usually random. It's usually not because they became lazy overnight. It is often because they became exhausted by being overmanaged, undervalued, and emotionally drained. They got tired of environments where excellence brought more scrutiny instead of more trust. They got tired of leaders who gave mixed signals. They got tired of carrying weight that was expected but not truly respected. They got tired of being the reliable one whose reward for competence was often just more work. They got tired of giving their best to systems that did not know how to handle it well. And eventually, they stopped reaching as hard. Not because they stopped being capable, but because they started protecting themselves. That's the part leaders need to take seriously. Because once a high achiever emotionally checks out, you may still have their label for a while, but you no longer have their full presence. And that's a real loss. So I want to leave you with this question. What makes a once motivated employee check out? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you seen this happen in your workplace? Have you experienced it yourself? What do you think drains high performers the fastest? If this message resonated with you, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs this reminder. And I'll see you in the next video.